I do not profess to be objective when it comes to Mike Leach. I never watched Texas Tech football before he got there, and I won't watch it now. I think he was wronged. I can't stand Craig James because of him. I thought he was the most fascinating coach in college football for a long time. And I think somebody is going to get a steal when he comes in to coach them. We turn down most interview opportunities that come across the wire because, frankly, I'm not interested in talking to those people, and this is not a sports show. But I happen to think that Mike Leach is one of the 25 people in the world alive today that I would most like to sit down and have a glass of wine with. And so he's our guest for no good reason than that. Coach, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great, sir. You've been on the show before. You may not remember, and I got so many emails afterwards. You were coaching at the time on how much people enjoyed your perspective. We never once talked sports, and you held forth on everything from Pirates to law to Geronimo. And I thought the chance to get him on again, I just can't pass that up. I know we only have you for a few minutes, Coach. Let me ask you, why'd you write this book, Swing Your Swords?
You know, it started when I did they did the article in New York Times Magazine, and people would say you ought to write a book, and we got hit up by various entities that wanted to help us write a book, and so it went, and then it was right after our 2008 season we decided to write it, and so Bruce Feldman and I worked together on it, and we've been at it for about 2 years, and anyway, it was about my path into coaching, turns along the way, people I encountered, ideas on motivating people, motivating yourself, kind of setting goals, some of the overachievers I ran across, and then, of course, the departure of Tech. I didn't want to leave that question lingering out there, so, and I'm not, leave it out there kind of guy, so we addressed that in 2 chapters. That wasn't, really a planned part of this book, but then, once it happened, it was like, well, we're not going to ignore it either. And what makes those 2 chapters real powerful is, it's all in the words of the perpetrators. We have an appendix there that could be about 10 times as long as it is, but in the back of the book, we have the documents in their words, memos, phone records, sworn statements, things of that nature. And so, there's none of this, well, there's 2 sides to every story. This is everybody's side. This is what they did, where they went, and how they did it.
Coach Mike Leach, obviously the drama at Texas Tech that occurred and your leaving is one of the things that will interest people about this book. I want to touch on that briefly before we go to what I think is more interesting about you. You make the point in there about Kent Hance, the chancellor, that he's a guy who loved the microphone and how jealous he could get of the attention that you received. Is Kent Hance the reason you're not coaching there, or is it Craig James?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. The biggest thing, Craig James was disappointed with the playing time of his son and was going to lash out and react any way that he could. And then, of course, I think Kent Hance enabled that entire thing. I think prior to our 2008 season, Tech reached out to me. The president reached out to me to sign a contract, and it was about the appropriate time. I had a couple years left. My contract was well below market, and so after a couple weeks, we agreed to one that would be a lowball third in the conference. And over the previous 10 years, my record in the conference was third behind Oklahoma and Texas. So it was, it was slightly below the market, but it was right there. And so we agreed to it in principle. And then shortly after that, the chancellor and a couple regions who are not supposed to be involved in contract negotiations take it out of the president's hands and say, well, we're not going to do anything at this time. And then so, of course, we have the 2008 season, which was a big season. And then the chancellor comes to me with a contract that's 10th. It's 10th in the conference, and it's worse than the existing contract that I have. And I said, well, I'm not going to sign it. He says, if you don't sign it, I'll fire you. I said, well, why would you fire me? We have the highest graduation rate of any public institution. We've been to 10 straight bowls. I had the best season in the history of the school, and I'm the winningest coach in the history of the school. He says, well, sign it or else I'll fire you. And I said, well, I'm not going to sign it. and I didn't. And then public pressure and outcry was on my behalf, and so eventually we signed the contract that we'd agreed to 8 months before with the president, which, was the lowball third one. The day after that contract is signed, and the memo's in the book, Kent Hansen, two of the regents that he has in his back pocket, actually three of them, I believe, are having discussions that if we fire him by November, we don't have to pay him. So they induced me into this contract without ever planning to pay. The other interesting thing, and they did it planning to hide behind sovereign immunity, which is a very outdated concept that says, you can't sue the government, you can't sue the sovereign. Well, in 48 states, you're allowed to say, in contract cases, you're allowed to sue the state, and most of that happened 1946 or earlier. In those states feel like that this private citizen deserves to be protected against the state, just like he does, another private individual. And so you're allowed to sue for damages for contracts, otherwise they're irrelevant. There's two states that don't that still have sovereign immunity and at times apply it to contracts. That's Texas and Kansas. If they were in the World Trade Organization, they're first of all, they wouldn't get into the World Trade Organization because they don't qualify based on that policy if they were a country. If they were in the World Trade Organization, their policy is congruent with that of Somalia, Micronesia, North Korea, and the Congo. So think about that.
Coach, let me ask you, you wrote this book, and it's something of a tell-all. Will this keep you from ever coaching again? Will you coach again? ESPN was out to get you. Your university said bad things about you, and you've had to sue them. Despite an incredible level of success, you've not coached again. Will you?
Well, when the right situation comes along, I think it needs to be understood that I got along with nearly everybody there at Tech for 10 solid years, and in 10 years we had 3 chancellors, 2 of which were great. We had 5 presidents, and all 5 of them were average or better, and I got along with them. And so, what's wrong with this picture? Me or the chancellor that came in and didn't just fire me, but fired a bunch of other people. I just happened to be the highest profile one. And then, if you have to be a head coach at the pleasure of ESPN, something's wrong with the whole system, and maybe I don't need to be a part of it. But, this book is about my path into coaching. It's not written with any level of animosity. It just sort of describes pursuing a passion. And but I do think that their actions have had a chilling effect. I think the actions of Craig James, the actions of Kent Hansen, a couple regents trying to smear me nationally and using ESPN to do it. ESPN allowed themselves to be used to do it, and even when the record was set straight, they refused to acknowledge that. I think it has had a chilling effect. I think, the book gives an opportunity to set the record straight. I don't know that it solves it because, they've spread this poison all over the place, but there is this about it. I don't run into hardly anybody that buys their side of the story. It's been discredited extensively, and so anyway, I'm looking for the right place to go that values graduation, that doesn't want to just sign up for football, that wants to win at it. And the greatest thing in the world is if you're a part of a university that celebrates the successes of all the departments, and you're a part of something big. I mean, that's what makes it really exciting. It's bigger than the individual, bigger than just football. You're a part of kind of a family where it's exciting on a lot of levels.
Well, it's interesting. I read in a report that at one of your book signings, you sold more books than Sarah Palin. I don't know how many coaches could do that. We promised we would get you to your book signing, but I'll just tell you quickly, Coach. I remember I always rooted for UT against Texas Tech, but I loved what you did with those teams. And I remember a statistic that was shown on the screen when y'all were playing UT the year that you won and went to number 2 after the victory, and it said that not one of your starters had been offered a scholarship by UT. So you were playing with inferior players, still managed to beat a better team. That's a pretty powerful story. And the second thing I wanted to tell you is, as I told your guy, when you come to town, I'd love to host a dinner for you and a book signing here. The book is called Swing Your Sword. Coach Mike Leach, thanks.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, and look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll talk politics and your thoughts on Coach Mike Leach, if you have them, coming up.
Where thinking Texans hang out.
They were stuck with ideas like freedom and the rights of the individual.
The Michael Berry Show.
I'm all ears.